The Opinion with Michael J. Today we start off with the false narrative that Carney's doing nothing. And that's furthest from the truth. But yet, conservative influencers fail to understand that, and I'll show you why. We'll start off, I don't know what it is, but it's going to be David, the head moose of Moose on the Loose. So here we go. Take it away, Moose.
Projects in the energy sector, in electricity generation, in environmental technologies such as carbon capture.
Carney's changing his tune here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we got Mark Carney meeting with Indigenous leaders, and he's come out and openly admit that there's no big nation-building projects on the table. There's not even a list of them. He hasn't even started the process. What are we doing here, Carney? Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we've got a good old-fashioned airplane Hijacking. This coming from Vancouver Airport, where U.S. fighter jets, F-15s, had to scramble to intercept this plane. They were able to bring the guy down, pull him out. Who is this guy? Well, it's this guy, Shahir Qasim, 39 years old. Apparently, he posted on social media that he was a messenger of Allah, sent to save humanity from climate stuff. It says he's now been charged with Hijacking.
Okay, so as you see, nothing but drama and a conjecture that, no basis, no foundation. But this, nonetheless, is what we're dealing with. What more can I say? What more can I say? And there's more of Moose on the Loose, and let's get more of this.
With China assuming a pivotal role on the current challenges and opportunities against the backdrop of the theme of this meeting, rebuilding trust.
Mark Carney isn't working for Canada. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, you might be thinking I'm talking about America, considering his stocks, but no, I'm actually talking about China. Mark Carney has been unrolling this plan, and it's becoming more...
Hold on, did he just say China exclusively? But the headline said he's selling us out to China and America. So what is it, David? Let's see if he can further elaborate.
And more apparent what's happening here, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. His deep involvement in China, what's unfolding with Donald Trump and the tariffs. What we're seeing is the first Canadian Prime Minister actively working for two countries, and one of those is not Canada. Let's jump into this. We're going to start this one off on the chart. As we already know, Mark Carney has a ton of investments in America. I said it 4 months ago, Mark Carney's working for China and he's working for America, and now we're seeing this more and more happen, as we're seeing with his stocks, obviously. I've updated the list here. I believe we have an accurate count now. So Mark Carney has 678 stocks, 8 of those are RRSP holdings.
I wonder how many, this is the million-dollar question, how many people in Canada are caught in a situation with American stocks that do not know what to do due to the way that Donald Trump has acted since he became president on January 10th, 2025. And nobody's touching upon this. It's just Carney. It's just Carney. Meanwhile, these American stocks, if they're held in Brookfield and Brookfield itself, Pierre Poilievre has a major holding in Brookfield. Alyssa Landsman, deputy conservative leader, has a major holding in Brookfield.
Self-administered, 567 investment account stocks, 103 conflict of interest stocks, for a total of 678 stocks.
Well, if those 103 conflict of interest stocks were held by a third party in trust, in a blind trust, then there really was no conflict of interest. But it could be a conflict of interest because of declarations. But because of these declarations and the understanding of the PMO's office that they're going to deal with any conflict of interest appropriately, not to breach any Conflict of Interest Act regulations. So you're going to see Pierre Poilievre, David here, all YouTube influencers abuse this here and create drama based on this issue in order to appease their base of people and to be able to maintain their status as an influencer, which is rather unfortunate because, they're making non-truths out of truths and truths out of non-truths. And I won't explain to you in what order and how, but I am showing you how. It's up to you to actually use your abilities of thought and reason to be able to understand and sift through the nonsense and understand what has merit and what doesn't have merit.
And out of those, roughly around 9 of those are Canadian stocks, or 1.3% of his entire portfolio is in Canada. Disgraceful. So there's some here like North River Midstream and Inter Pipeline in Canada. But these Brookfield ones often, while they operate in Canada, they're registered in Bermuda or the Cayman Islands, and that's how they dodge taxes. What we're talking about here today...
Oh, hold on a sec. He mentioned Inter Pipeline. And on another video he mentioned, this... hostile takeover of Brookfield against another company to take over Inter Pipeline. But here's the thing that David doesn't understand. Inter Pipeline initially was owned by the Koch brothers, major influencer and donor and supplier of monies to the original Republican Party, probably the biggest, period. And... the other firm, Pabina, that was trying to take over Inter Pipeline, was 40% financed by KKR, Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts, which, if you go back to the Michael Milken and junk bond era and the RJR Nabisco leveraged buyout, then you'd understand the motives behind Brookfield and why it was in our best interest for a Canadian company to take it over. Just saying, this is outside the scope of the understanding of most people. But here we go. Now we're going to the U.S. and China, and let's see. This is a Globe and Mail article, by the way, that...
Current predicament. Washington no longer views Canada as an ally, but rather as a subordinate from which to extract concessions. It's a stark reminder that trade diversification is no longer optional.
Yeah, what you have to remember is, we were an ally of the U.S. for a long time. Great trading partners, stood by them. They stood by us as best they could, because America is a beast upon itself. But nonetheless, you have under Trump, where America has an allegiance with Russia now. They no longer have an allegiance with Europe, Canada, or Mexico. They're fortifying their allegiance with Russia, which really is contrary to the way that America's viewed Russia throughout the history of the modern world since the end of the Second World War.
It's an urgent national imperative. Goes on to say here, Ottawa's building an independent economy. We must build a more reliable political relationship with China that supports access to its growing markets. Oh, really? Why China? Why not Vietnam? Why not Korea?
Because here's why, David. America was considered the number one market in the world. China, the second largest market in the world. So Globe and Mail is making a good point here. And what you, a conservative influencer, fails to understand during the second term under Trump, first term was different. Trump and his Project 2025 have derailed most of the safeguards or guardrails in place to protect the people of the United States of America, but Trump has dismantled that. And so the second term with Trump, you have to understand Trump, the functioning illiterate, narcissistic demagogue, is out of control. And you see that with what he's done to Mexico, Canada, Europe, and a tariff to every country in the world. And what you don't understand, you think he's done a deal with Britain that's a great deal, but meanwhile, a deal with Britain, who was in a positive trade surplus, also has a 10% base tariff. You seen one lately with Singapore with a 19% base tariff. Meanwhile, Singapore has to spend $20+ billion, or $40 billion, 20 plus the Boeing deals, another 20 to 25 billion, for a total of 45 billion for all intents and purposes. And here's the other issue, and Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick. Lutnick is benefiting financially by this deal with Bitcoin and the way he is able to process a lot of transactions in the markets in the United States with his proprietary software. So, well, Howard Lutnick, and Peter Navarro have the ear and are influencing Trump, which Trump doesn't need a lot of influencing because, he's the genius. That's why you got a genius act with the Bitcoin. So making a no-tariff deal with the U.S. will be virtually impossible. Might be a slim chance that could change, but highly unlikely.
Why is it China?
And China right now is running at the same rate as...
And this thing with Carney, if you look at the date here in this video that Moose on the Loose, head Moose, David, it's from March 25, 2024.
Fossil fuel investment around the world in total. China is building a more resilient economy. We all know the world faces shocks. We need to be strong in resilience, and part of the way we do that.
Plus, we have to understand, and this is where, David's made these points for this flow chart with Brookfield and that, renewable energy sources and how these people like Carney and other investors are going to make themselves rich. But here's what David does not understand. The world. This is a natural progression of world economies towards renewable energies. And that's the way we have to go as a planet. No getting around it. This is the way the planet's going. And you're going to find out in another 20 years, and you'll see that play out. It's really the way of the present and the way of the future. There's no disputing it, scientifically or any other way.
Is through the international cooperation that this forum is going to help advance.
He keeps pushing China because he's invested in all these companies that will make money from China pushing towards all this green EV stuff, carbon capture. As you'll notice, Globe and Mail came out with 3 articles within about 2-day period, and everyone's wondering, what the heck, why is Globe and Mail pushing China so badly? You got to remember, Globe and Mail is directly connected to the Century Initiative, Power Corporation, Mark Wiseman, and Mark Carney. These guys are all wrapped up together.
Yeah, but hold on, David. Here, this is also beyond the scope of understanding of this conservative influencer. That Power Corporation, which is the Demarais family, Montreal, old established family, one of the richest in Canada. So you really failed that you create these conspiracy theories and you really don't understand what's going on, David. And that's the folly of thinking you know more than what you know. You should stick within what you know because you're misleading and misdirecting people. And people have to use their own judgment and really take in all the facts from all sides before providing any hypothecations. And it's really the simplest way of looking at things.
Officially put this on the board. It's just sitting off to the side here, but this needs to be fleshed out. But these guys are wrapped in with Mark Carney and that whole Century Initiative, which is the plan to get to 100 million people by 2100. So we look back down memory lane.
So these conspiracy theories, just utter friggin' nonsense. They go on, and they're going to continue down that path. It's not going to serve anybody. So let's move on to the next group of people, which is the Calgary Sun. This guy, Kevin Klein, and the Calgary Sun of July the 19th.
Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I am joined by 2 of my colleagues from the Winnipeg.
Okay, 2 of his colleagues from the Winnipeg Sun, or Calgary Sun, Winnipeg Sun. We have to understand that the Sun is owned by an American hedge fund that's promoting American Republican ideology as conservative ideology, which the Republican Party originally used to be, but it's morphed into MAGA South, and now under Poilievre, it's morphed into a new guise of Maple MAGA North. So the Calgary Sun is going to create a narrative about Carney that is false and self-serving to the conservative ideology. And I'll give you a little more insight and explain after you listen to this here first.
Sun, we have Jeff Currier, a columnist, and Royce Coop, another columnist with the Winnipeg Sun, also a professor of political science at the University of Manitoba. Gentlemen, I got to get...
Okay, so University of Manitoba and the Winnipeg Sun. So I have been corrected, folks.
Get this off my chest. If I had the opportunity and I was standing in front of Prime Minister Carney, I would say, get on a plane, get down to the White House, and do not move until you have a deal. What is he doing?
I just got to interject first and foremost here. You're wasting your time trying to get a deal with Trump. You want to get your people that work under you to work with Trump's advisors, et cetera, to try to get a deal and make the odd phone call to Trump, Carney himself. But you're wasting your time trying to force a deal with the United States. We need to change the way we do business while this Trump term is in place. Just no ifs or ands about it. That has to be the strategy. Because you're wasting your time, and the Americans hope you waste your time by trying to negotiate with them, because Trump's been a criminal all his life. He's been associated with the Russians most of his adult life. I know of a person that created the Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, and Pandora Papers. The major architect between setting up the oligarchs under Boris Yeltsin and subsequently Mr. Putin. So we're wasting our time with Trump right now. He's tied in, otherwise Ukraine would be greatly helped, but he's not helping Ukraine. Putin recently took over more of the Donbass region and took some of the mining critical minerals. And you got to remember, a couple months ago, Trump had Zelensky in the office trying to get a critical minerals deal, which he did get. And he said, if you get the deal, you won't have to worry about Putin because we have an interest in critical minerals in Ukraine. You know, that's a false narrative. Now, just saying, folks.
He might be growing roots under him to get a deal with Donald Trump. I don't know how long you'd have to sit there to do that.
You got to try. This 77% of our economy depends on this. This is nothing to, you're not going to replace this by the money from Europe. You're just not.
No, but you can help replace it by opening up markets between the west coast and the east coast of Canada, unhindered by any tariffs across border from province to province, number one. Number two, and you've seen where we've had a divergence there in that respect, and that is Scott Moe in Saskatchewan and Danielle Smith in Alberta, where they're taking back Alberta and Saskatchewan's taking United States liquor. That should have been kept shut. That door should have been kept shut, but Scott Moe, Danielle Smith opened the door for the U.S. liquor to flow into Alberta and Saskatchewan. And this is where the leaks come into place.
No, yeah, Royce, there's no question that we're, even if we can diversify our trading routes, and we can to some degree, the United States is always going to be our biggest trading partner. We got to get this fixed.
Yeah, I mean, we can do things. This is like a years-long, probably a decades-long project, reorienting our trade partners. There's things we could do in the short term, things we should have done 10 years ago in terms of infrastructure, in terms of pipelines. I think the thing that's striking about Carney right now is how he's trying to shift expectations. He's now saying that we should just accept the idea that any trade deal with the U.S. is going to include tariffs. It's going to include U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. Well, that isn't what he was saying in the election campaign.
Hold on. He was warning you how serious we've got to change the way we do business. You just didn't listen. That's really what it's about. You didn't want to listen because you think your way is better. And that's why. This is why you just keep beating this drum. We're just going to waste more time. Pierre Poilievre's on the same playbook as you are. It's just going to waste more time. We don't need time wasters. We need to change how we do things.
And we can now add that to the increasingly long list of things that he's changed his mind on since the Elbows Up campaign just a few months ago.
Well, it strikes me odd, babe, because I think you're right. The tariffs, I think Trump's going to keep them. It was just last month I was watching the news, and it was huge down in the U.S., and it was the first month the U.S. government had a surplus. And it was all because of tariffs. So why would either party walk away from those right now when they can hang their hat on, oh my goodness, we had a surplus. We've got more money coming in because we have these tariffs. I think that that's going to be something that every country is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, until people have to start paying exponentially more for the products that they buy, the average consumer. I mean, we've been down that road before.
And he's made a valid point, because the tail of the scorpion is going to hit the Americans very soon.
To talk about Carney and some of the things that he has changed, here's kind of a theoretical or a rhetorical question, is that what has Mark Carney done that Pierre Poilievre would not have done? In other words, Mark Carney is prepared to make significant cuts to government spending. He has gone on record repeatedly, and most recently with some of our First Nations leaders, as favoring more pipelines in Canada to try to keep our domestic oil production going. He's even told the CBC to make cuts after promising during the election campaign to give them more money. So Mark Carney, I know he ran as a liberal, or a sort of a centrist, if you will, but he's governing more as a conservative, is he not?
Yeah.
You guys want to stroke your own egos because you're conservative. I'm neither conservative nor liberal, so I've got no hat in the race either way, so it doesn't matter to me. But the thing is, what you do not understand, I'll give you some of the micro and macroeconomic factors at play here that have happened already under Carney that you're not aware of. And that is CRA, Revenue Agency of Canada, taxing homeowners for Airbnb, and that should have been done a long time ago. Because Airbnb is a business. Regular people have invested in buying up all this residential properties, converted to Airbnb, pretty well put out a lot of hoteliers out of business or near out of business because of it, so that they could profit. So now, clawing back taxes on the people that do those operations. And this will help, minor help, this is just one of the steps to mitigate the supply and affordability regarding housing. And the same with COVID funds. And this is what you do not understand. It's under the radar. It's beyond either one of these three parties and the Moose and others. Mind you, the Moose did touch upon Airbnb, but he looked at it from a different perspective. He didn't understand how it was helping reshape Canada, but that was beyond the head Moose's conceptual understandings at the time, and still is, and probably he's going to push back if he ever hears this commentary. But that's where we're at. And there are other factors at play that I'm not going to bring up right yet, but will in this video.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing things that are directly contradict what he said in the election campaign. It bothers me as someone that cares about democratic accountability that we have politicians that say one thing in an election campaign and then do another once it's over, and do so in a kind of baldly obvious way. And this is the kind of thing that hurts confidence in democracy.
No, what hurts confidence in democracy is when you create a construct to serve your way of thinking, which is really dishonest. I'm going to be front and forward with you on that. You've created that construct, nobody else, and it feeds your ideology, construct of the way you think, this conservative way of thinking that really has, since 1985, wiped out the middle class around the world, and you just don't get it yet. You're intelligent people. Someday you may get it, but we'll see.
It hurts confidence in our democratic institutions. You know, it's not just that Carney is doing things that are different than what he said in the campaign. He's doing things that he attacked the Conservatives for saying they would accuse the Conservatives of doing some of these things, cutting the CBC, cutting the civil service.
No. Right away, CBC, they wanted to defund totally. CBC was considered by Pierre Poilievre an institution that Canada no longer needs, defunding it. So let's not misguide the people in that respect. Now we're going to move on to our next video because I think this is important because we're running out of time. Klaus Kellerman, I believe his name is. Is that what it is? Klaus Kellerman? I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, take it away, Klaus.
Hello, everyone. I hope your day is starting off as fantastic as it possibly can. I hope you had a great night's sleep and you're ready for a brand new day.
With a picture of that pooch beside you, how much better can it get?
I had a great night's sleep, except Marty wouldn't stay on his side of the bed. I thought I would start the video with an image that might put you in a good mood, and I want to further that good mood by discussing a very positive development for the Canadian economy. And it's a market industry that Canada has just entered into, and it's one that we are in direct competition with the United States. And we've made somewhat of a flanking move to outflank the United States and capture a market for ourselves before they can. You might have heard it discussed in the media, but I'm going to try and present to you a little bit more detailed discussion and point out how important and how big a deal this is. So let's get into it. As reported here on British Columbia's CBC news page, tanker bound for Asia after loading Canada's first cargoes of liquefied natural gas in BC. This was reported on June 30th, and there's an actual picture of the first liquefied natural gas ship at the new terminal in Kitimat, where it has been loaded with liquefied natural gas bound for South Korea. Now, this project has been characterized as the biggest private sector investment in Canadian history. The complete project, including the pipeline, the LNG terminal, and all the facilities, is a $40 billion project. And behind me here is a map of the pipeline that starts near Dawson Creek in northeast BC and travels all the way across the Rocky Mountains to Kitimat, where the LNG station is.
And what you have to understand is that when Justin Trudeau got elected in 2015, within a month or two, the process to start building this came into play. And you have to understand, under Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre, they never built this type of pipeline to this type of market. They did some small ones. They went down to the States to get sour crude down there, to Sarnia in Ontario, and a backsplash pipeline, which brought from the Irving family Saudi oil, Middle Eastern oil, to come back out. Because you got to understand, nowhere in Canada, and that's where Sarnia has a hard time with bitumen, and this is the sour crude, the West Canada standard. So you have to understand this. So this is the very first pipeline that was completed to this market to go to the West Coast to serve Asia. Trans-Canada Mountain pipeline from the government also is the first pipeline of its type. Never happened under the Conservative government. And people say, well, Trans-Canada or Trans-Mountain pipeline extension costs so much. That's why Kinder left the project, because of the technical hurdles and the cost to go through the Rockies in order to make the project come to fruition. And this is what you need to know.
If you don't believe that's a big deal, look at the terrain that this pipeline had to cross. And I'm just here on Google Maps showing you how you would have to drive from Dawson Creek to Kitimat. It would take you 11 hours on a highway to drive that 1,033 kilometers. Now, why does this represent such a big deal for the Canadian economy now that the project's completed and the potential to expand this project? Up till now, every molecule of natural gas that's been produced in Canada has been put into a pipeline and either distributed for domestic consumption or shipped to the United States. And the price for that natural gas in North America, a snapshot today, is $3.26 per million British thermal units. Canada produces much more natural gas than we could possibly use in our own country, so a lot of it is sold to the United States for that price. Now, the United States does various things with that gas. They consume some of it themselves. They transport it through their pipeline infrastructure and actually sell some of it back to us in Eastern Canada. And some of it, because they're a big supplier of natural gas themselves, they have an excess amount. They transport that gas, some of it to the East Coast and some of it to the Gulf of Mexico, where they have liquefied natural gas stations, and they can export that gas. The United States currently has 8 operating LNG export stations. Their LNG export terminals are on the East Coast and in the Gulf of Mexico, giving them access across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe and markets towards the east. Europe is the primary destination for US LNG exports, and they also sell to South America and other areas in the Middle East. Canada has built one of the first links to the West Coast, and we can now supply markets like Japan and South Korea. The price of liquefied natural gas in Japan right now, snapshot, is $12.26 per million British thermal units. So instead of selling our gas for the North American price of around $3.20 to the United States and letting them export some of it in the form of LNG to Europe and South America for higher prices, we can now transport that gas to the West Coast and sell it to Japan for over $12. And we can capture that market before the United States cashes in there, because Canada has built this pipeline over the Rocky Mountains. The United States, from their sedimentary basin in the central part of the United States, where most of the oil and gas is found, has found it much easier to build pipelines down to the Gulf of Mexico.
And one of the other salient points that you must understand here, even though he mentions 1226 now, there is a marker, historical data. In May 2025, the price was $10.80. And this is what you have to understand with commodities like oil and gas. The prices can fluctuate a great deal. And this is where it's so tricky, especially with bitumen from Alberta, which is the sour crude, and Western Canadian Select. The cost, if the Saudis and Middle Eastern OPEC guys flood the market and bring the price down, you can't make money with Western Canadian Select because of the cost in order to, and the cheapest way is with steam, but it's still very costly in comparison to the more refined, lighter crude of Brent and Middle Eastern oil.
And to the East Coast, avoiding crossing the Rocky Mountains. This one project is expected to export 14 million tons of LNG per year, create 300 ongoing jobs, and is an estimated value of almost $500 million annually for its 40-year lifespan. And Canada is planning more projects like this, LNG Canada being the first one, and the illustration behind me shows a list of all LNG.
And what you have to also understand, like the phase 2 is very much possible without having to create a huge expenditure to do another pipeline. Because of LNG, liquid natural gas, being able to compress it more if it's successful, you can actually double the outflow to other markets, providing it's capable. And this is where phase 2 comes into play, where they can double it up. You can't do that with crude because it cannot be compressed in the same manner as liquid natural gas can.
LNG projects that are in the planning process or complete in Canada right now. The first one being LNG Canada Phase 1, which is on stream now and projected to export 14 million tons per year. And the number 2 project there is LNG Canada Phase 2, which is also expected to export 14 million tons per year. So what does that mean? That we have to build another pipeline and spend another $40 billion? No, that's not how it works.
Okay, he's going to explain it here now.
Let's take a minute here to explain the difference between oil pipelines and gas pipelines. We have to always have a little bit of physics and science in these videos, right? There is a big difference.
I don't know.
between
Some
oil
people can get it.
infrastructure
Some
and gas
people can't.
infrastructure. You
So-
transport both substances in pipelines, but because of something called fluid dynamics, the properties of how they move in those pipelines is very different. For example, a major pipeline that was just completed in Canada was the Trans Mountain Expansion. In the picture behind me, you'll see two pipelines, a black one and an orange one. The black pipeline on the map from Edmonton to Vancouver was the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Well, the Canadian government just recently completed a twinning of that line, the Trans Mountain Expansion, which is expected to add another 1 million barrels a day of capacity, transporting Alberta oil to the port in Vancouver.
And another thing you have to understand also, Japan and South Korea have the refineries in place to be able to refine bitumen. And that's why initially a lot of our oil went to the U.S., because the U.S. has refineries that can refine bitumen. And that's where the Irving oil in the East Coast is not the same. And that's what people have to understand.
Now, why did we have to build another pipeline? And with any pipeline, when you're flowing a liquid through that pipeline, there's a maximum amount that you can flow through it. And one of the key factors that governs what that maximum amount is the fact that fluids are not compressible. So the pipeline can only hold a certain volume of fluid.
Okay, so we've explained enough of this here now. We could go further into it. He's got more to explain, I'm sure, but we got to move on. So here's the thing you don't understand. You think you can deal with Trump and you can open markets, and it's a false narrative initially when Carney said during the election campaign, we have to change the way we do trade. And a lot of these conservative influencers to this day are in denial still to this day about it. And you just don't understand what's going on in the United States right now if you don't follow what's being said and actually being done, and not propaganda from Fox News. And you have to understand Fox News can get away with it because they're a cable service provider and they do not come under the FCC, which a company like CNN and others fall under the umbrella thereof. So we're going to go to Ben Meiselas, professor at California, doing a lot of YouTube. Him and his family's turned into a new business for them. And let's hear what
state
they have to
regime
say.
media known as Fox was losing it on air as Donald Trump announced that he was suing the owner of Fox, Rupert Murdoch, who also owns the Wall Street Journal. And Donald Trump claims that the Wall Street Journal defamed him by printing an article about how Donald Trump allegedly sent a birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein for Epstein's 50th in 2003, where Donald Trump's...
And we've seen a similar trend up here in Canada with Pierre Poilievre and CTV, owned by Bell Media, and how he's tried to influence the media in the same manner as Donald Trump has. Trump's even got Stephen Colbert fired from his job. 60 Minutes. Lawsuit there. And the head guys of 60 Minutes left the business. So
said, we share our secrets together. Enigmas never age, Jeffrey Epstein, during the period while Jeffrey Epstein was sex trafficking young girls. So how was Fox reacting to all of that? Did they address the lawsuit against their owner? Did they address anything Epstein related? Well, they are state regime media, so the answer is no. But what they did talk about was the real big scandal we need to focus on. I guess for them, the auto pen scandal that they're making up. I guess people are like, what? Auto pen? What are you talking? Doesn't everybody use an auto? What are you even talking about? So they've got a new one, folks. Out comes Tulsi Gabbard. We haven't heard from her since, for what, months? Tulsi Gabbard comes out and she's like, all right, I'm super serial now, guys. All right, I came up with one. Are you ready? Former President Obama did something about Russia and it's really bad. And that's the big scandal, everybody. So Fox was like, that's what we're running with. It's Obama did something and something here. About Here, play this clip.
Now, to me, it sounds like you have appointed, powerful bureaucrats that just flat out created a narrative that was false to undermine a duly elected president. Now, if that's not a grand conspiracy, I don't know what would be. Do you see crimes here?
I do, Sean, and I'm referring all of these documents that we have found and uncovered, referring them to the Department of Justice.
You're not getting married, Tulsi. Do you accept this person as your lawfully wedded? I do, she says.
For further investigation, accountability, and action, not just investigation, but action. Accountability has to take place. The American people's ability to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic.
Tulsi, they're not going to have faith in the democracy of the republic for this nonsense, because this is just absolute bullshit. And I know it. I witnessed Trump being a conduit for money laundering for the Russian, for Boris Yeltsin. Putin, Colombian drug cartel, Mexican drug cartel, like, come on now. I witnessed it, so I know this is just a hoax. The Russia hoax is only a hoax if you believe the Russia hoax is a hoax. Just saying, folks.
Is literally what's at stake, and therefore the future of our ability to exist as the country that we know it.
Okay, do you see what was that? Like, what do they even mean? But Donald Trump right now, he speaks to Vladimir Putin about like doing musical and theatrical productions together.
That's
Dude
right.
loves Vladimir Putin. What's the Russians?
They got a bromance going.
These people are so dumb. Excuse my language. Anyway, but that's what they talked about the entire day. What we really are focused on is Obama. A criminal investigation into Obama. This is what they talked about on the other show. Here, play this clip.
Well, it's extremely disturbing at every level. And the fact is, President Obama needs to answer for this immediately.
What's really disturbing is this U.S. Senator going on the record and stating what he's stating here. That is what is really disturbing.
Immediately. There needs to be a very clear and unequivocal answer to how this happened and why exactly his administration, in concert with the intelligence community, was changing reports to make it appear as though that Russia interfered in our elections and to further this entire...
Russia did interfere with your elections. As a matter of fact, they created this wonderful propaganda scheme. It was called QAnon, or QAnon. And here's the beauty. The story that was concocted with QAnon was based on a real story between Epstein and Trump and young girls. But they switched the characters and they put the Democrats in there instead to try to turn the people of America against the Democrats. And that's really what happened.
Scam that has been perpetrated on the American people to undermine his successor, President Trump. It is just fundamentally wrong.
Okay, and then they really lay it on thick. Okay, when I watch this,
is really a joke.
I mean, I'm like, who the hell watches this? And it's like, yes, this is news. This is news. This is.
If you have a modicum of intelligence, you really have to laugh at this nonsense and how this has been able to happen. Like it is. It's ludicrous.
Crazy stuff. So this next guy goes, he's like, when Donald Trump told me that we were in the golden age, I never knew we were going to get to fire Stephen Colbert. This is so amazing, everybody. Here, watch this. Play this clip.
It's no doubt that we are in the very beginning stages of a new golden era for America. I have only one complaint. When the president was running the first time...
Hold on. I just want to interject here. The golden era, which he calls the Gilded Age, which is late 1800s, which led to the Roaring '20s, which led to the crash of the Dirty '30s. And this is what you're seeing repeat itself under Trump.
He told me and the rest of America that we would get tired of winning. I was very doubtful that we would ever get tired of winning. But I recently told the House Speaker, we are winning so much that we only have about an hour to celebrate one victory before we move on to the next victory. Could we possibly slow it down just a little bit so that we can stage a big
Horace, what are you
celebration?
talking about?
We need to celebrate a big celebration.
Losing the moment.
Now, I want to celebrate and then celebrate again, and then I want to hear Colbert got fired, then Kimmel, and then
Sean, a celebration.
CNN's off the air because nobody watches them.
A celebration.
I want it all.
Friggin' Sean Hannity's too much. He wants it all. Oh, okay, it's going to change here.
A celebration takes at least a couple hours to do, and I think there have been so many
stop
amazing
sipping your wine
things.
and just take a shot and then move on to the next celebration. I mean,
oh my God. Okay, compose yourself. Compose. Okay. So then you have Greg Gutfeld, who Donald Trump, when Stephen Colbert got basically fired or his contract was not renewed by CBS as CBS is trying to do its merger with Skydance, and they need approval by Donald Trump's FCC. So we learned that.
Yeah, so Donald Trump was holding up the merger with Skydance and Paramount. Paramount's got an over-leveraged balance sheet. Skydance is going to bail him out. And lady owner of Paramount, Summer Redmond, or Redstone, passed away. She's looking to profit billions of dollars. But she has to give a piece off to Trump because Trump's suing her if she doesn't, because of the CBS thing with the Democratic president-elect and 60-Minute interview, which is a fiasco. George Stephanopoulos' payout was also another thing. Presidents just sues everybody, and they've been paying him. Payoffs, they're just, you never seen anything like it unless you followed 1930s Germany. The problem, or the difference between 1930s Germany, there was order there. In the United States, under Trump, you have chaos, and Trump's micromanaging the country. Sputnik, Besant, nobody can do anything unless he approves of it.
The Skydance CEO met with the FCC like 2 days before Colbert found out that his contract was not being renewed, like the most successful late night show. But yeah, okay, because he told bad jokes about Donald. He told bad jokes about Donald. He doesn't like when someone tells.
That's the truth.
He doesn't like when someone tells bad jokes about him. Okay, so you have Greg Gutfeld right here on Fox, and Greg Gutfeld's like, and the Democrats, they lie to us. And Trump says Gutfeld is funnier. He wrote a post, Trump. He goes, Gutfeld is funnier than Colbert. Okay, you tell me. He's like, and the Democrats come up with all of these hoaxes, Gutfeld, like the climate hoax and the trans athlete hoax. What are we talking about? And they come up with everything that he mentions right now. It's like the most utterly deranged. What do you mean? You're saying that climate change isn't real? What are they even talking about? Here, play this clip.
You're trying to replace the word hoax. Look, I'm trying to figure out, have the Democrats asserted anything that is real? The climate predictions, no. High-speed rail, no. Trans kids and suicide risk, no. White supremacy and military, no. Fine people, no. Collusion, no. Joe's brain, no. The Democratic Party is the hoax party. It's like you've created an alternative universe where only you can feel comfort in there. These are not conspiracy theories. These are not things people believe. These are things that you create.
But you have it here in Canada. Been created under Pierre Poilievre, Juno News. What's the other guy? Fake news. Ezra Levant. Juno Elevate podcast and Moose on the Loose. You're just following all these, making these conspiracy theories that don't exist and creating them out of friggin' pea soup. Conflating opinion into truth, which is a huge mistake. We're not going to watch any more of this because it's already way past what I wanted to do up to this juncture. And let's move to the next one.
I went out last night before our show and I called people in the media. I called people at Fox, I called people at CNN, former CNN, MSNBC, etc. Is this going to finish him? Did we find something where it's going to schism MAGA and this is going to finish him? So, Gaddy, 15 of 15 people that I spoke to said no.
I agree with that.
What say you? So we're now 16 of 16.
We're 16. So
I'm 17 of 17.
So we're all in. We're kind of.
So does that mean, as a Wall Streeter, when everybody's in agreement, that means
we're wrong.
That means we're possibly wrong. Okay, so because that's what
Wall Street.
But this isn't Wall Street though. He's going to be 3 weeks from now. We're going to be moving on to something else. He'll drop a bunker buster bomb. Yeah. He'll start a fight with Putin,
or he'll invade Greenland, invade Panama. So what they're stating here is the Teflon Don, known as Donald J. Trump, even though this Epstein fiasco is pushing back against him in ways that nobody would have thought, in ways that people would think may actually ruin Trump permanently, Anthony Scaramucci and Katty Kay are stating that, and based on their research with other prominent news people, that the Teflon Don has still got good Teflon. And it's going to bounce off him because he's going to create another distraction, like bunker bombs on Iran, but only this time it might be Panama or Greenland. He'd like to do Canada, but it's kind of tough for him to do with the international community. There's still a bit too much pushback, but if he could get away with it, Trump would get away with it and invade Canada.
Something will happen where this will go away. Am I right in saying that or no?
I broadly agree with that, and we've been doing this on Morning Joe all week too. It's been the kind of main topic of conversation. We should talk about how the Democrats are handling this and how kind of liberal media is handling this in a second. But I think what it does point to is a problem within MAGA of ideology and schisms and splits that are held together at the moment because Donald Trump is there. But once Donald Trump leaves the scene...
Such a good point.
I mean...
Okay, and that is a good point. And the same thing here with Canada, where Pierre Poilievre, Mega Maple North, is creating this other split within Canada. And it's just the same nonsensical ideology from the United States. And this is why the Conservatives did so well, except for Pierre Poilievre got rebuked by his riding of 20 years because they're not falling for that nonsense, like the American people did, and the Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Western Canada people fall for, because they're under an illusion. And that's just my point of view. I stand by it, and you'll see history will actually find merit within that assumption. Let's move on to the next one. We need to move on. So this is why it's very dangerous here, and this is because if this is the case and Trump is still left to his own devices and he's not taken down a peg or two or more because of Epstein, then that is an issue for Canada. And this is what you have to understand, and this is why Carney's way of doing things and redoing things is so very, very important, that we don't give up in changing the direction Canada goes. And if they get rid of Trump, or the political climate in the United States is different, then we can look at adding the American business back into Canadian culture the way it had in the past. But till then, it's a slippery slope. And if Trump had his way, he would invade Canada. Mark my words. Next video. Here we go. Representative Adam Smith confronts Hegseth, which is the Department of Defense puppet that Trump put into place. Freudian slip there. Put into place so that Trump can do whatever he wants with the Department of Defense. And another thing you have to understand is that with that big budget bill, ICE, which is their immigration arm, it's become a private paramilitary group under Trump. It was initially in his first term. People don't realize that. But now they've greatly expanded it. And so it's a paramilitary under the admin of the United States, which is Trump. They do what he says. The Defense Department under Hegseth does the exact same thing. Seen Tulsi Gabbard, Department of National Intelligence, propagating a false narrative with the Russian hoax and Obama, and I witnessed differently, and I know of it. And I've got the facts, too, for it.
Hegseth just said the Pentagon is ready to invade. Pete Hegseth just said the Pentagon is ready to invade Greenland and Panama. This isn't satire. This isn't a Cold War flashback. This is a sitting U.S. Defense Secretary openly acknowledging that under Trump's leadership, the military has plans to take sovereign nations by force.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the budget point, and I made this point before the committee before, the House just passed a budget that adds nearly $3 trillion to an already out-of-control debt. So if we do really want to spend money on defense or anywhere else, we got to be willing to pay for it. And I this, certainly go back through generations of, bipartisan problems with this. You can't have a debt that size and keep coming back talking about how much money you're going to spend, whether it's defense or whatever your priorities are. Mr. Secretary, you said the 99% down on border crossings and the border is secure. At the same time, we're going to take $1 billion out of the MILCON budget, out of building barracks, to send it for the border, and there's another 4,000 troops that we're planning on sending down to the border. Given that the border is secure, might you rethink that spending?
Well, sir, we are securing it. It is secure, but it's a manpower-intensive effort at the beginning.
Two different words there. It's either secure or secure, and it sounded to me like you said it was secure.
It is secure.
Okay.
What we're continuing to do is expand that and fortify it through infrastructure, which is a big part of the budget on the Department of Homeland Security side as well. So it's that $1 billion you're talking about was from the CR in FY25. We fully fund that back and more in FY26 with a recognition that we were dealing with the world as it existed when we came in. And the previous administration said they needed new legislation to secure the border. It turns out you just needed a new president.
I would point out
president with the Defense Department and DHS that was willing to go to the border and actually secure it, which is what
not submitted a budget yet. So whether or not you're putting that money back in remains to be seen. You have definitely taken it out. And I think the obsession there, and I don't disagree, the border needed to be secure. But from a pure budget standpoint, let's just not keep the political focus on that. Let's make sure that we're funding some of the other priorities that we have. So when it comes back to acquisition reform and the chairman's point, it's our committee, certainly Congress is part of the problem. We set up a lot of requirements. Defense contractors are part of the problem. I'm curious, how would you get after reforming the culture at the Pentagon so that you can move faster, number one, and number two, how would you get after the defense contractors that push the requirements process? And specifically, what would you do about the requirements process to try to speed things up?
Well, first of all, I think gold plating is a real problem, sir. I mean, across the department.
Interesting to use the word gold in this particular context, but yes, I agree with you, actually.
We maybe could use a little bit more silver plating on occasion. A recognition that the 99% solution is oftentimes the enemy of the 85% solution that delivers 2 years sooner. And that's contractors and other companies wanting to do right, but trying to do too much and overpromise, and then they're under-delivering, and the warfighters...
Not always wanting to do right. In some cases, just
not always.
Just
not
want
always.
to make money, but yes.
The change is also in acquisitions about people. You need reformers in these positions. I'm here to be a disruptor of those processes. Our deputy secretary has extensive business experience. The types of people we're bringing in as undersecretaries have been disruptors and innovators in the private sector who recognize that bureaucracy can be dysfunctional and needs to be disrupted. So it's taking outside-the-box unique approaches. I mean, virtual design is a big example. How many times are we going to build something physically that takes a year to build when you could use AI and computing power, design it virtually, identify the flaws and move more quickly,
Our
or
committee-
create open architecture so you can.
Our
move
committee
systems
stands ready to
between.
work with
I mean,
you.
there's 500
One
different
final
things we can
question.
do, and we're doing them.
Yeah, and I'm sincerely concerned about this.
This is the most important question here. Listen up, folks.
Is it the policy of the Department of Defense that we need to be prepared to take Greenland and Panama by force if necessary? Is this a policy that you have within the Department of Defense in accordance with the President's wishes?
I heard what you said about those two countries and saying we need to worry about China. Well, we are worried about China.
That wasn't my concern.
China's malign influence in Panama.
I was
the
concerned
recognition
with
that if
us
China has
saying
control
that
of
using
ports
military
or
force
malign
to
influence
take another
over the
sovereign
Panama,
country's
we
territory.
should pay attention to that.
Right.
So Panama is very key terrain that we've focused on, and we've been willing to focus
So we
on,
should
as
take it.
is Greenland.
We should
key
take
terrain.
it by military force. They're important. I'm not going to argue with that.
The Arctic is
I'm
incredibly
arguing with
important.
the
and
using
adversaries are
our
trying to
military
gain-
to take it by force.
Our job at the DoD is to have plans. And
Do you have a plan for that?
Our job at the Defense Department is to have plans for any particular contingency.
Including the contingency of basically
Any
invading
contingency you need, we've got it. We've got a building full of planners, and we're prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
So just be clear, you have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not
and
for that.
Thankfully, we are in the planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland. I'm going to go out on a limb on that one. I yield back.
What you just heard wasn't satire. It wasn't an SNL sketch or some rogue general in a Tom Clancy novel. It was the actual Secretary of Defense sitting in front of Congress, openly entertaining the idea that the U.S. military should be prepared to take Panama and Greenland by force. And here's the chilling part. He didn't flinch. He didn't say, no, that's not our policy. He didn't say that would violate international law. He said, we have plans for everything. Think about that. In response to a congressman asking if the Pentagon is planning the military conquest of sovereign nations, Hegseth all but confirmed it. No outrage, no clarification, just a casual shrug of militaristic bravado. Let's step back and unpack what that really means. In a functioning democracy, war plans, especially ones involving countries like Greenland, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, a NATO ally, are not supposed to be joked about. They're not supposed to be drafted unless we're facing a real, immediate threat. And even then, those decisions go through Congress, through diplomacy, through the Constitution. But under Hegseth and this new Trump-aligned Pentagon, it's starting to sound like they're operating from a very different playbook, one where the military doesn't serve the country. It serves the ego of the commander-in-chief. Because make no mistake, this is the same Trump worldview that once floated the idea of buying Greenland. And now, it seems that if buying doesn't work, Plan B might be invasion.
That is correct, and this Hegseth is an enabler for Trump. And this is what you have to worry about. And also the major guys in the military, long-term guys, they've been replaced with yes people. Everybody in the administration under Trump has been replaced with yes people. You don't have the guardrails in place that you used to have. So this is what you need to worry about, folks. This is what you need to worry about. So now I'm just going to backtrack. And I'm going to state, if Trump had his way and he could do it, he would invade Canada. It's a lot closer than Greenland or Panama. Makes one continent much easier for him to exert his will under. So if you think a new trade deal without tariffs under Trump is possible, think again. It's pretty much impossible. So conservative influencers fail to understand under Trump, under the second term, which is Project 2025, very different from term one. The functioning illiterate, and this is what Trump is, a functioning illiterate. He hung around with Epstein for over 15 years. Epstein will tell you, Trump had no idea how cause and effect works in real terms. So the functioning illiterate, which is the bottom 28% of society around the world, that's where Donald Trump falls under. He's a narcissistic demagogue, which you've seen. He'll take out He's exerting his will and ways on influencers of a different stripe to show a different story, which is dangerous. Very, very dangerous. He's targeted people like former FBI directors, et cetera, have his way. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going. Questions, comments, please throw in the comments section after the video's been posted. Love and peace to everybody. Take care. Ciao for now.